fields. India has been a strong partner and has stood with us through thick and thin for many, many years. And we're particularly grateful to India for all the support it has given us through the COVID-19 pandemic, its contribution of medicines, vaccines, and for just standing with us as a solid partner from the South and sharing with us India's expertise and India's great love for the African continent. So why does Africa matter? Why is Africa key to global economic growth? I think the critical thing is that Africa's economies have been growing consistently at an average of about 5% per annum over the last decade. We're also have established an Africa continental free trade zone, which is going to be one of the largest in the world and will, provide a market of 1.2 billion people. We have the youngest population in the world, which means that by 2050, we'll have the world's largest labor force. So you have a whole group of energized young people who will be able to provide the labor that the world needs as the rest of the world is aging. We also have 65% of the world's uncultivated arable land. The energy sector in Africa is vibrant. We have huge reserves of oil, minerals, and so on. So what we have in Africa is potential. And African governments are beginning to see that potential. The most critical thing, I think, for Africa is the way Africa is integrated into the world economy. Our challenge is that Africa still remains a continent that is a net exporter of unfinished and unprocessed goods. What we need is to change that paradigm and make Africa a place that makes things, that processes things, that adds value to things, a place that seizes technology and uses technology to leapfrog development barriers. We need to fight poverty by changing the way Africa engages in the global economy. And I think the partnerships that we are going to forge in the coming years will be those kind of partnerships, those partnerships that invest in Africa, build Africa's competencies to enable Africa to compete, to trade inwardly, and to trade externally. I mean, despite the fact that our economies have been growing rapidly, we only contribute to 3% of world trade, and we have a population of about 2 billion people. So that disparity needs to be closed. And we need to engage with partners that understand Africa's new vision, this vision to industrialize, this vision to seize technology, this vision to compete based on the ingenuity and innovation of our people. So that's the promise of Africa. That's the importance of Africa to the global economy.
Wonderful. Ambassador Chabra, you, of course, served in Africa and you know the region well. Why does it matter to India, the rise of Africa? And how do you see this happening over the last few years through your own observations?
Yeah, as you rightly said, Ambassador Suri, I have vested interest. I have served both on the West Coast and East Coast. And in fact, both my boys were born in Africa. So if ever there was a real African in the house there, we have two people there. So no, coming seriously, I think Minister Omamo mentioned the points quite well. She elaborated all the points. So I don't want to go over them again, but I'd rather go to sort of the Indian philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The world is one family. So the rise of Africa, it's not only Africa, we're all in this global sort of village together. So we either rise with the rising waters or we'll all sink together. So that's what's critical for the globe to now recognize. And this pandemic and then climate change and these sort of issues coming up clearly show that how integrated we are. So the rise of Africa, we can't have continents or countries or regions being sort of completely left behind. So we all have to go on to this growth engine together, maybe at different paces, as we ourselves have seen. Some countries have grown much faster than us. But then we are picking up, and now it's Africa's sort of turn to come up, and they are following all the right sort of policies are coming into place. So the sooner Indian industry realizes the potential that is there, which I have seen with my own eyes, the better it will be for them of marketing to have got onto.
Thank you, Ambassador Chabra. In fact, you make a very good point about the need for Indian industry to get more actively engaged across the African continent. And one of the things that I used to talk to industry during my time as a diplomat was Africa is not a country, right? That it's intellectually lazy to think that you have ideas or solutions for Africa as a whole. When you're really talking about 54 countries on the continent. But I think back in 2006 it was when we started the first India-Africa conclave, and I'm very happy that particular initiative that we started is still going strong. But Gwendolyn, let me move across to you and request you to give us maybe your banker's perspective on the potential and the rise of Africa.
Thank you very much, Najib. I mean, the two former speakers have set the tone. I think there's definitely that potential for the rise in Africa, which has been talked about for so long, not only because of the young population, as the minister mentioned, but also because there's a lot of room for technological innovations and transformation. A lot of our sectors, be it the government sectors, be it the private sectors, we are at the beginning of the spectrum in terms of what we can do with technology. That technology as well, if we could innovate and push it to the end, will help us with our governance issues. And what do I mean by that? If we could have our tax collections, our customs collection being transformed onto digital platforms, then it would ultimately impact the governance that is a key problem for us within our countries. I believe also that Africa is an investor's dreamland. When you talk about return on investment, when you come to Africa, because you're coming to what I would call fertile ground, and a lot of what is brought in is new. So the return on investment for most investors will be much higher than they could get in other more developed markets. The other point is also on urbanization. You know, now with growth and with innovation and with development, we see a lot of our village populations moving into the townships. This is another opportunity because with that comes the need for construction. We need to build houses to be able to inhabit all of these persons, and a lot of foreign investors have the capacity and the skill to be able to do so. So if you also look at the socio-political stability that we're beginning to have with more of the countries going or accepting democracy, let me put it in quotes, it also gives more stability to the countries that entice investors to come in. So I believe that all of this coupled with the undeveloped trade corridors, because between ourselves, we are not trading as much as we should. If you look at Cameroon and Nigeria, or Cameroon, which is at the center of most of the countries around or that are landlocked, like Chad, like Central African Republic, Equatorial Guinea, and the rest, we have the capacity to do more in terms of trade between ourselves. Why not go across to the West African countries like Ghana and Senegal and Cote d'Ivoire and East Africa as well? But we hardly do intertrade within the continent. So just for those reasons, I believe that the possibilities are huge, and we should really work on seeing how to tap into that to take the continent to the next level.
Thank you. And maybe you answered a couple of points about my next theme, which was really about the challenges that countries in Africa face on the path to economic development. It's been a bit of a cliche over the decades that Africa has huge potential, and economists and leaders have grappled with this, that the potential is there for everybody to see, but how do you actually realize that potential? And if some countries have realized it, why haven't others? I mean, mind you, these are challenges that we face in India as well on a daily basis. And if some parts of India have done rather well, there are others that have been distinct laggards. So there are parallels that we in India, I think, perhaps uniquely understand and appreciate about this. But Ambassador Omama, if you were asked this question, Minister, about what do you think are the principal impediments to Africa realizing its immense potential? Maybe 3 points that you would like to mention?
Thank you for that question. I think Africa's impediments are also Africa's opportunities. For instance, one of the reasons why Africa is unable to capture the promise of intra-Africa trade is the absence of adequate infrastructure. We need railways, we need roads, we need water and digital connectivity, we need energy that is consistent and that is viable to enable us to move towards manufacturing and industrialization. We need our people to move across the continent so that talent is spread across the continent. These are impediments, but they're also opportunities for partnerships, for investment. At the same time, like I have indicated before, Africa is a continent that has potential, but it's also vulnerable to shocks. We're vulnerable to economic shocks because we are a country that is still very dependent on the sale of commodities. So when prices fluctuate, we receive shocks. We are receiving shocks from climate change. We are receiving shocks right now from our weak public health infrastructure as a consequence of COVID-19. But all these things can be improved if we work together to see the silver linings around each challenge. There are ways in which we can use Earth observation technology to deal with the challenges of climate change. There are ways in which we could partner to strengthen our public health systems. There are ways in which we can help Africa add value to its goods and services to ensure that they are insulated from shock. There are ways in which we can work together with partners to provide more access to Africa, more access to markets for Africa's goods and commodities. These are challenges, but they are not insurmountable. The future for Africa is for our friends to see Africa as we see it, not as a place of despair, not as a place of backwardness, not as a place of challenge, but a place where challenges can become opportunities. And those opportunities will arise when we engage with our partners in the right types of collaboration, the right types of cooperation. I'll give you an example. One of our biggest challenges in Kenya was how to move towards the manufacture of textiles. And what the Indian government did with us was to repurpose, refashion, and rejuvenate one of our oldest cotton manufacturing factories. And that has created jobs, invigorated the area around that factory, and is moving us to what we want, to have some sort of self-sufficiency, some sort of ability to produce textiles locally. So when people see our need, are able to respond to those needs, to partner with us, to build capacity, to invest in people, then we'll be able to see those promises that we envisage. We'll be able to realize them. And I think partnerships need to follow the path that India has been able to draw out, to sketch out for us. And I hope that our private sector, our government can continue to engage with India in this way.
Thank you very much. That's a very encouraging example, Minister, that you've outlined about the textile facility. And I take that because, you see so much entrepreneurship in Africa across the countries. And what I think people need is an opportunity and some maybe capacity building in certain technical areas. Then the sky is the limit. Ambassador Chabra, before I come to you, the minister is sitting on the very close to the east coast of Africa, and I wanted to jump across to the Atlantic coast, which is where Gwen is sitting, and ask her that is the view more or less the same from the Atlantic coast, or are there substantive differences in how you see some of these challenges and impediments?
Thank you. The impediments, when you hear across Africa, they seem to mirror equally everywhere. But I look at it at the flip side, because I believe that at the end of the day, it starts also with our mindset. Our mindset has to change to be able to take on all of the new challenges that we're hearing and all of the new opportunities. Let me give an example. I'm in the banking sector, and in recent times, there's been a lot of talk about digital transformation. EcoBank was one of the first movers on this. And the mindset of the population wasn't ready for digital banking because there was a fear of not being able to touch their money meant insecurity. So at this point, you need the regulators to step up, to be on the same page with the financial sector, to say if it's being done elsewhere, it's an opportunity for us and not a threat. So I think mindset is one of the big impediments that we have, because we are all afraid of change and afraid of doing things differently. The second point for me is about our educational system. Our educational curriculum hasn't changed for long. We have been schooled for a very long time. You have to come out to be a doctor, a teacher, a lawyer, and that has been the case, an accountant for years. But now the future is such that the curriculum has to change to enable the youth to be ready to actually be part of this digital economy that we are seeing coming. Sometimes to hire just a simple marketing person who has the skill of digital marketing, or the new tech starts up with cloud technology. We don't have the local skills to be able to man the jobs that are coming in as opportunities. So I think one of the impediments is also the fact that our educational system hasn't been adjusted to take opportunity of what the future holds for Africa. At the same time, we have this problem that has been mentioned again about infrastructure. We are having a lot of debt from foreign donors that are supposed to finance infrastructure. But you see that the debt is coming in more to weigh the continent down when you measure it to the progress that you're seeing in the infrastructure development. So an impediment is how this foreign debt or foreign support is being managed. It's good for us to receive it, but how are we actually applying it to make it effective and to make sure that it ties in with the developmental goals of the country? And I think that goes back to leadership being an impediment, because, with leadership, as I mentioned, there are issues of governance and compliance and the legal system that has to kick in for us to be that continent that everybody hopes, and we ourselves as Africans hope to see. Leadership has to change its vision. It has to change its approach. It has to change the mindset. It has to set the tone so that when all of these opportunities that we see coming our way come, we are also ready to accept and know what to accept and implement, how to implement what we are receiving as support, and how to make sure that our young population is ready to be able to take the opportunity on. Because yes, we do have that young population, but they have to be ready with the right skills, with the right mindset to be set to benefit from that and take, the continent to the next level. So from my end, those are the impediments that I see that if we adjust, we could really take full possession of the opportunities that are coming our way.
Very well put. And I think, as the minister said, that some of those impediments have an underlying opportunity. What we've seen in India over the last year and a half, 2 years, especially during the pandemic and the forced lockdowns and so on, is a boom in the edutech sector. And over the last year, several companies have achieved this unicorn status of $1 billion or more in valuation in the edutech sector. And what they do is deliver far more affordable education across geographies. And I think there's going to be a major underlying opportunity. You mentioned about digital money, and the minister would be the first to say that it was Kenya, which was a trendsetter really with the M-Pesa in this. And in India, last month, we crossed 2 billion transactions in a month with digital money. But Minister, you wanted to say something before I go to Ambassador Chabra.
I wanted to just build on what my colleague had mentioned. I think one of the impediments that we often ignore is the integration of women into our societies and the empowerment of women, and the need for us to unleash that potential, and the need to skill, upskill, and reskill women so that they're able to position themselves favorably to take advantage of the opportunities that are present. And I think many African countries are beginning to realize that development has to be holistic. Economic growth has to be holistic. And you have to use all the potential in your society to move forward. So, and again, it is an impediment, but also a huge opportunity to move the continent forward.
And Ambassador Chabra, where you sit today, do you see impediments that hold back the India-Africa relationship from growing stronger?
Not really. I think it's not really impediment. I think it's more of a lack of, if you look at it as a lack of information. The lack of, I think a lot of Indian industry, I'm quite surprised, and even others in the circles we move around, really aren't aware of what Africa is all about. So when I speak to them and explain it to them, I mean, I can see the surprise on their face, and and it's very easy to convert. Because it's so compelling, the case is so compelling, and of course it comes from my heart, so I have no problem in selling it. But to convince them, it's a very straightforward argument, and some of them have taken the opportunities, as Madam Minister mentioned, that these sort of infrastructural bottlenecks are actually the opportunities, or as Gwen mentioned about the education sector. So India is offering the possibilities of, firstly, from the Government of India side, the scholarships, the training, and now an e-satellite network to linking up satellites to the best universities in India and Africa for training. But more than that, the private investment in education, I mean, it's really a big market. Just to give you a small example, I mean, just from one state while I was in Nairobi, from Gujarat, there was a delegation that came in, very short notice, and we set up a sort of fair. And there were about 15 universities, and I wasn't really sure what sort of response they would get, because the first time, state universities, they just come in and they get, by the end of the day, more than 225 students had actually signed up and paid up. They were coming, full fees paid, and they were ready to come to the state of Gujarat for studies. So opportunities are there to be just taken. And this was just a one-off event that happened. If it's done much more, intensively, more structured, it was just an one-day event. Opportunity to be had there.
Welcome to the small but growing tribe of Afro-optimists and evangelists. I think we need many more of them in India and elsewhere. But the development process itself needs partners, needs international support.
that result in win-win solutions that build our people, build our economies, and chart a pathway for growth.
Thank you. Ambassador Chabra, the ministers alluded to other countries, including India. So tell us some of the things that India is trying to do across the African continent.
Before that, maybe just a line on Prime Minister Modi when he spoke at the Ugandan Parliament. He pretty much spelled out our 10 principles of our engagement with Africa. So I won't read out the 10 principles, but I'll read out just principle number 2. I think it's quite relevant in our context of our discussion here. Our development partnership will be guided by your priorities, African priorities. It will be on terms that will be comfortable for you, that will liberate your potential and not constrain your future. We will rely on African talent and skills. We will build as much local capacity and create as many local opportunities as possible. So I think, so that's the broad philosophy on the basis of which our partnership with Africa is being thought about. But otherwise, I mean, we have, to start with, at the political level, of course, the interactions have increased. Our visits have taken place, over 34 high-level visits at the Prime Minister, President, Vice President level, over 100 ministerial visits from Africa to India over the last 5 years. So at that level, in terms of people-to-people contact, we are giving e-visas now to over 33, 34 of the African 54 countries. So there's a lot of engagement at that level. Scholarships. More than 50,000 scholarships were announced at the India-Africa Forum Summit 5 years back. Just as part of that summit engagement, over 43,000 scholarships have already been done. And that is quite apart from the ITEC scholarships that we are giving out to African countries, which is about 5,000 every year. So that's a separate thing. In terms of lines of credit, we announced $10 billion 5 years back. Over 6.5 to 7 billion have been allocated. In terms of grant, there was about $600 million we announced. We've given out about $700 million of grant. So the engagement is just sort of being scaled up in all levels. In terms of investment, we are the 5th largest investor in Africa, over $50 billion. We are targeting to reach $100 billion of investment in Africa, across sectors, across geographies. In terms of trade, we are at 64 billion. We're looking at achieving maybe 150 billion soon. So again, in trade also, energy is a new sector. In terms of investment also, Minister Omamo mentioned that sector. But otherwise, all across agriculture, food processing, I mean, the investment really runs across sectors and across countries. We've opened new missions. So being a diplomat, I should mention that. We promised just 2 years back 18 new missions. We've actually opened 13. So 13 out of 18 are operational. 2 are being opened in a few weeks. So we will be at 15 and there are 3 left to open. So we are serious about our engagement. Boots on the ground are coming up.
That's 18 additional missions, right?
That's right.
Right. And I think a key difference perhaps is that when it's Indian lines of credit or other initiatives, a lot of it flows through the private sector. The hand of the state is relatively light, if I could make that comparison, unlike the Chinese model where it's largely state-owned or state-driven entities that are asked to take up. When as a businesswoman and as a banker, if you had a wish list of 3 things that you'd seek from the international community for which you think would bolster Africa's development aspirations, what would they be?
Thank you. I really hope that this is going straight from my mouth to God's own ears. I've really been fortunate to be in the financial sector for over 20 years, and we have seen a lot of multinationals that have operated within our countries, and I think they have given employment, they have brought development, but at the same time, it would be good if a lot of the capital that is invested is also invested to develop the countries in which they operate. Why do I say that? before the past 5 or 7 years, I would say, there wasn't a lot of community service. We are beginning to see it now because of the pressures of the Sustainable Development Goals that are forcing a lot of them to have to invest just in the environment in which they operate, be it little schools or dispensaries or what have you. A key factor for me would be that imposition by the governments within which these companies operate to insist on the education of and development of the staff that are employed in these entities. Because you see a lot of multinationals have been here 60 years, but if you look at the life of the employees that have worked there for long, they remain at the same level in terms of skill set. So I think it is the duty of both the government and the private sector or company to have that agreement in partnership in what they have to give back. Secondly, when you look at the type of financing that we get, if you look at the Chinese or you look at the French or you look at the Turkish, I'm talking about what I see in my environment. When you look at the contracts that are being done, you have a lot of skills or staff that are being brought in from out of the country to come and do what I would call really menial jobs. That goes to foster the point I made. Yes, we are not close to technical support because it is necessary. As I said, our educational system has not catered for all the different needs that we need to be able to do a job. But we should how much. We have companies, foreigners who come in to invest. They bring their financing from their governments. They bring their skill, their labor in shiploads from the countries in which they are coming. They bring everything prepared, and all they need to do is to execute the jobs on the ground. I think it's also our government's responsibility to make sure that they define and limit what and what not, so that it remains a win-win contract. The contract should be a win-win contract for both parties, because while we are supportive to receive the help and the support, and we are seeing the impact on the country, but at the same time, it should not strip the country also of every little ounce of what they have, just for the purpose of receiving support. So if I had a wish, I would wish for more balance in terms of the contracts that are being done. I wish that apart from just investing and, reaping the dividend, there should be that investment in the education of the people that are in the country to take their skills up. And also that they should train more people that are available on the ground, because the population exists, than just looking for a simple solution of just importing the skills that they need to do the job and exporting it back out without actually leaving, those skills around locally. So that is what I would say if I had my wish list of how we could do it better.
Wonderful. When India does these IT centers of excellence, for example, and we've done these in quite a few countries in Southeast Asia and in Africa, one of the things in the contract is that in 5 years we will hand it over to the host country where it's located. We do not want to run it. We want that in 5 years there should be enough capacity in the country to take it forward. Minister, we're running out of time. I'm being reminded that we have about 4 or 5 minutes. So let me just try and wrap this up with one concluding remark. Let's say if there's one message that you would like to put out to the audiences in India and around the world today about the rise of Africa and what is your expectation of it, what would you like to say?
Well, I'd like to say that the rise of Africa is not a cliche. It is a reality. And that Africa has many stories. And the stories of Africa are not just the stories of poverty and despair and conflict. They are also the stories of innovation. The stories of Africans trying to solve their own problems through their own initiative, through their own agency. What Africa needs today are partners that are able to tap into that energy. There's a long way to go, but we have begun the journey with determination. Our governance systems are improving. We are trying to invest in infrastructure. We're trying to lay the foundations of the new Africa that we desire. It's not an easy task. Others have walked it before us, and we can do the same. Like my colleague said, we need to change our mindset, but we also need to be tenacious and innovative. And we need to ask the uncomfortable questions and climb, the path that is rocky and arduous. But we will get there. And so my message is one of hope, one of perseverance, and one of friendship and solidarity for those who want to engage with us on this important journey for the uplifting of the lives of our people. I thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador Chabra?
Taking off from Minister Omamo's statement that Africa has just begun the journey. So I think we may have begun a few years before Africa. So we know exactly what it feels like when you're right there at the beginning. So we are there as partners, and with two populations of 1.3 billion each, therefore totaling more than 2.5 billion, I think the India-Africa partnership can really be the defining partnership of this century. So we are there to sort of partner you as equal partners. We look forward to that partnership.
Gwen, you have the last words.
Thank you. My hope is that the narrative of Africa's potential should not remain a narrative. It should actually come to life. And I think the onus is on all of us. It's not only on those who want to come in to help the continent, but even us as African civilians, we are supposed to take part in any way to make sure that this actually comes to life. I'm proud today to be working for a company like EcoBank, which has economic development and financial inclusion as the center of their vision and the mission. But I still believe as an individual, as an Africa, I have my part to play to make sure that the potential that everybody sees, that I live on a daily basis, I actually take part and somehow do my bit to make Africa the giant that it should be. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Your Excellency, Minister Omama, Gwendolyn Abunao from Cameroon, and Ambassador Rahul Chabra from the Ministry of External Affairs in Delhi for joining us this evening for this panel for the Raisina dialogue. And we look forward to being in touch from ORF, from the Center for New Economic Diplomacy, which I head, and where we are really trying to see whether we can create a lighthouse of good ideas that can emanate to all directions and take in all the ideas from across. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, and welcome to another virtual book discussion organized by the Observer Research Foundation. Up for discussion today is Dr. John Ikenberry's latest work, A World Safe for Democracy, Liberal Internationalism and the Crises of the Global Order. Most of us know Dr. Ikenberry for his extensive body of work on the liberal influences in contemporary US foreign policy.